Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Living Enviado podcast. Actually, it's an introductory episode because I'm going to be the one interviewed. So my name is Steve Schirmer and I'm your host. So normally I'm going to be the one asking questions, but today I've got my friend Stuart, who is going to be, I guess, the interviewer. I'm the interviewee.
Yeah.
And he's going to be asking me questions this time to help you understand and learn what we're all about and why we exist. So I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Sure.
And let you ask me questions.
All right. Hey, y'all. So let's start with the podcast name.
And by the way, he's one of the people behind the scenes, so he doesn't like to be in front of the camera.
Not really. But it's okay. So I just wanted to ask, we'll start with the title, okay? What is Living Enviado? Because I think that the people who read it first, they're going to be like, what is that? What does Enviado mean? I mean, we all know what living means, but if you can give us a little bit of, tell us a little bit about what that is and what the whole title means and how you came up with it.
Yep. So the word enviado is a Spanish word for sent, S-E-N-T. So I actually came up with the word. My wife is Puerto Rican. I have a business, it's called Enviado, and I was looking for a creative word that would describe what we're doing. And I was going through a bunch of, living in China, I went through Chinese words, I went through Hindi words, I went through Arabic words, and I just couldn't find a word that flowed off the tongue that I think would be easy for most people to say,
Sure.
and that captured the heart of who we are. And then I started looking up Spanish words. And I came across enviado, and when I found out what it meant, it actually made sense. So, the purpose of the word enviado or the word sent is just describing who we are as believers. When Jesus was saying in the book of John that the Father sent him into this world, and in the same way, he's sending his disciples out into this world. So it comes from that concept that as believers, we are sent ones. And so that is how we led to creating the business, but also created this podcast, Living Enviado, or AKA Living Sent.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's good because I feel like in Christianity today, I think people believe that only the missionaries are the ones who are sent, but every Christian is sent because we all have Jesus gave us the Great Commission. It's not just for missionaries. That's pretty good. So what can we expect from this podcast? Like, what are you going to be posting? What are we going to hear in the future? I'm assuming more podcast episodes will be coming out. So what are we going to hear about that will be helpful for, I don't know, a Christian, in the American church or outside the American church who are going to be listening to this podcast?
So the goal of it is just pretty simple: equip, inspire, encourage believers to live sent lives. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to do some interviews. We're going to interview some people. In fact, the next episode, which is supposed to be, I guess, kind of technically the first one, or 1.2 or whatever you want to call it, is going to be of a believer, a refugee. Most people don't look at refugees as typically those who are out there actually sharing the gospel, planting churches, making disciples. But this is a refugee that was forced to leave his country, forced to go to another country, and ultimately became a missionary in that country.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be interviewing people like that. We're going to interview, as we would say in English, the average Joe or the average Jane. Just, people who work in the secular workforce, who aren't the professional missionaries or professional ministers.
Yeah.
We just want to give a broad picture of what or how God is using people in various ways in life, various vocations, how they're living that out, how it affects the people they're around or the jobs they're in.
Yeah.
We are going to have a strong focus globally because that's where my life is mostly outside the U.S.
Yeah.
So we will do a stronger focus on that, but we will, of course, share some things from the United States as well.
Sure.
And hopefully this will just be something that will stir people to begin to look.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it that we're not going to be pushing people to do something or trying to convince people to do something, but hopefully it'll just cause people to look at their life, what they're doing, what they're not doing.
Yeah.
And also show them ways that they can do it, maybe potential opportunities or potential avenues that they could live that out locally in their hometown, but also globally.
Yeah. That's good. I like how you said, like, you're going to be using the global church to share stories and testimonies of people, of our brothers and sisters that we're going to be sharing eternity with. in this podcast. So you think that, so like I know like we were talking about earlier, like, most Christians in America, they're invested in something, Calvinism or, apologetics or something like that. But like, is this only going to be helpful for people who are invested in missionaries, or is it going to help everybody? Any Christian?
Any Christian anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just designed for Americans or Westerners. It's going to be designed. I mean, on one end, it's designed for English speakers because that's where we're at right now. We're not dubbing into the other languages just yet, but maybe in the future.
Yeah.
But anyone who speaks English, understands English, they could be here. They could be in the country of Colombia. They could be in India or China. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It is just designed to help believers everywhere. Because in fact, my day job, I am heavily involved in helping believers in other countries do this very thing.
That's good.
Okay, and providing trainings and doing conferences and things like that. This is just another resource to add on to that.
Sure.
And so I already know we're going to have people in England listening. I know we're going to have people in Bogota listening. I already know that because that's where my connections are at. And so, any believer anywhere who speaks English.
That's good. So let me ask you one more question. So because we have a lot of podcasts today. You can just open Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We have a podcast for everything. So, what would be, hold on, let me word this right. So the stories that we hear from different Christians around the world. So obviously, like in the American church, we have in America, we have a lot going on. We have work, we have a lot of things going on during the week. And what would you say to someone who really don't, I guess, want to listen to another podcast because there's too many, right? And like, I guess you could help us understand like how listening to stories and testimonies of Christians, our brothers and sisters in Christ who are from a different country, because they have a different experience with Christianity. They're being persecuted, or they have like a different experience. They can't gather like we gather. Like they don't have the same freedoms that we do when it comes to worshiping God and everything. What would you say to someone who, I guess, who doesn't want to, who doesn't have time, or who has that, kind of like a oblivious perspective towards listening to stories and missionaries and stuff like that, especially this past year? What would you say? Hope that made sense.
What would I say to them? Honestly, I don't know what I would say to them, because I think, as you were asking the question, my thought was going to some of the other podcasts, especially like missions-driven podcasts. Some of them are organizationally based, and so they're really focused on promoting their organization. I mean, they can share stories in the same way, they can do all that, but their end game is typically recruiting for themselves.
Yeah.
Which is nothing wrong with that, okay? My goal is not that, okay? I'm in a system like that, just outside of all this, but my goal isn't to do that. My goal is to just see the church kind of move the needle, if you want to call it something, move the needle in their life from either inactivity to activity, or from one activity maybe to an enhanced activity. So, for example, I was recently in the Middle East, and one of the guys who came with me had never been outside the United States, never been outside the southeast part of the United States, and then he finds himself 13 kilometers from the Syrian border.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so first time. In fact, when he signed up for this trip, he's a school teacher, and he went because we were going to another country in South Asia that was going to put his teaching skills to use. And then we had one problem after another, and the next thing we know, we're 3 countries later, we're in this new place, no teaching opportunity, and I kept asking him, "Are you okay with this?" He said in the end he was, and so he still came. At the end of the trip, even though he did no teaching, and that's what drew him to it. And when I asked him, he said that was what drew him to the trip. Otherwise, he never would have signed up for it.
Sure.
But being there, he realized there was so much more than just teaching.
Yeah.
And by the end of the trip, he was asking me, "When's the next trip?"
Yeah.
And he's already been offered a Now, he didn't know if he was going to do it because of certain scheduling conflicts, but he was considering going to what I call the next level. Because where we were at in the Middle East was, I mean, the Middle East is not always easy.
Yeah.
But it would be child's play compared to where he is offered to go in just a few months' time.
Yeah.
But to even consider that, he needed a first step. So,
Sure.
hopefully, if people are listening to this, they're probably got some kind of something stirring inside of them that has to do with serving others, going abroad, doing local ministry of some kind. There's something there.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, we're not here to try to recruit them for something or for a certain organization. It's just trying to challenge the church to think differently. And on one level, as I've been told recently, I don't like BS.
Sure.
Okay. I really don't. And when I prepare people like I did him for a trip, I tend to sometimes try to scare people into not going. I don't want them to have a fake idea of what the reality is.
Yeah.
Okay, the Middle East, there are some
Yeah.
problem places. There's some problem places in South Asia.
Yeah.
But I don't want people to think, oh, because I'm American, because I'm a Christian, that everything's going to be hunky-dory in the end.
Yeah. You want to tell them the reality.
Yeah. So hopefully that attitude of mine that I can't seem to shake would maybe a little bit different from other people. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do listen to some of those podcasts and they're good.
Yeah.
I mean, I would recommend them.
Yeah.
But I feel like some of the people we're going to interview are a little bit different.
Yeah.
They're not all missionaries.
Yeah.
They're not all pastors.
Yeah.
Some of them actually live and work here, but they have figured out, or they're figuring out how they can be involved globally.
Yeah.
Whether it's a school teacher or a principal, is another interview we'll have in a few weeks, that lives here near me.
Yeah.
He's wrestling with how to do this. And so,
Absolutely.
again, everyday Christians, everyday Joes, everyday Janes, this isn't about the professionals. If they want to be a professional, this might not be the right one. I mean, in reality, I hope I can help in that way, but this may not be like the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the average person because I tend to look at myself like that.
True. Wow. That's good. That's good. I think I'm looking forward to the episodes that we're going to post. I think the church in America at least would benefit a lot from hearing what's going on around the world, because we're so closed here. We're so worried about our own churches, and there's so many people out there who are struggling, especially our brothers and sisters, like I said earlier. So we're going to bring this to a close. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with your audience, and anything that you want to, that's pressing on your heart, for the future regarding the podcast? Or
let me add something to the last question just to emphasize what I mean by looking at myself as the average Joe, even though technically I'm the professional. I get that I am, but I've never been to seminary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a Bible school grad or anything like that. I studied criminology at a secular university. That's just who I am, and I struggled with that for a long time because I was told early on as a believer and early on in this journey by my pastor that God would never call someone like me to do what I do in my day job because I never graduated from seminary. And that's a complete lie.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that for many, many years.
Yeah.
But it took those years for God to show me, for my life, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. What I do, it wasn't necessary. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a church planter. I'm not any of those things. So that's why I love talking to the average person, because there is a place for everyone. It doesn't mean you're going to be the pastor or the church planter, but there is a place that we all fit in this global spectrum of global ministry. And we can all have an impact on it. And that's really the ultimate point. Having that impact, finding our place, seeing how we can use the skills God has given us to be involved.
Yeah.
And then showing people the pathways to get involved.
Sure.
And if they can do that, then they're gonna be blown away like this teacher was that I talked about earlier.
Sure.
His whole life has been rocked, I think.
Yeah.
And he probably was not expecting that.
Yeah.
But he came home completely different.
Yeah.
And now he's trying to figure out what the next step is.
Sure. That's good. I think we're good.
All right, everyone. So thanks for joining Stuart and I on this first introductory episode. And I'm looking forward to sharing the next episode next week with my friend Shetty, and then another friend after that in the following week. So again, thank you for watching. And whatever platform you're watching, whether it be a podcast platform or YouTube, if some of you are watching YouTube, just encourage you to subscribe so you don't miss out on the content we drop. And we will do this journey together. So as we do that, just remember to stay faithful, stay bold, and live sent.